Right, so I'm here with Steve McClure at Kendal Mountain Festival. Welcome, Steve. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Great to be here.
Awesome. And so for those that don't know you very well, I know you're really famous in the climbing world, but for those of us who aren't climbers, how did you first get into climbing yourself?
Well, I got into climbing a long time ago. Both my parents were super keen, so we used to go out all the time. We were living in the North York Moors area, which is a really lovely place. The climbing's maybe not as well known as other areas of the UK, but it's pretty nice around there. It's picturesque, it's nice rolling hills, and we'd go out once or even twice a week, every week. So I got into it there, and it was a great start,
Awesome, that sounds awesome. And so we're going to be talking to you today about your 8A and above 1,000 climbs project. But how did you build up to your first 8A climb?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question because I didn't climb my first grade 8 route until I was about 25 or 26. It was relatively late, really, and so, I mean, maybe you could say I was building up to it all the way through, but certainly I never thought I would climb that hard until just before I climbed it, to be honest. I was a traditional climber until I was about 23, not sport climbing at all. So I never really imagined I would climb a route of that difficulty. And once it came into view that it could be possible, wow, that was exciting. And I spent a couple of years sport climbing before I finally managed my first grade 8 route. But as soon as I started sport climbing, it was always on the cards. I knew I was going to do it eventually, it was just a matter of when.
Yeah. And what's it like for someone who doesn't do climbing and isn't familiar with all the grades and things, how hard is an 8A?
Oh, well, so the thing with 8A is it is really hard. There's no doubt about it. You can't just start climbing and climb that grade unless you're an absolute total natural. But for most people, we'll never climb that hard. For most climbers will never climb 8A. And even those that try really hard and train and are very motivated, they're still going to find it really hard. It's not achievable by many people. It's
so
not.
A bit like a sub-3 marathon. It's like sub-3-hour marathon. So like if you've got most people can do sort of like train up for a 4-hour marathon, but sub-3 is like quite elusive to a lot of people.
Yes, I mean, I'm not an expert runner, but I imagine it's something similar to that. It's hard to achieve. I think the problem these days is that with social media and so many people that are really quite good at climbing, it sort of dilutes the achievement of climbing 8A. It makes it look like it's not that hard, but it is actually still, it's a big achievement.
Really hard. So is it like really tiny, crimpy holds?
Oh, well, it could be tiny, crimpy holds, it could be really big holds on a very steep overhanging wall, it could be very short, it could be very long. There's 8As of every possible standard, style, literally everything.
Amazing. And so when did you decide to climb 1,000 of them? Because that is quite a lot, isn't it? That must have taken you quite a long time. When did you suddenly realise, oh, I've done a few of these, I'll do 1,000?
So I never set out to climb 1,000. I would never have dreamed of that. When I first climbed my first grade 8 route, it was so exciting. And I was only looking towards the next one. And I think I can remember at some point thinking, oh my God, I might climb 100 of these, which I did. And then beyond there, it was just more and more and more and more. And it took me 28 years before I finally climbed all 1,000. But I never imagined 1,000 until maybe I got to around 900. And I always write them down in my little list. It's always in there. It's on a Word document, and it's got the 8A grades and the number next to them. And I remember putting in a block of maybe 20 that I'd just done, and it went into like 900, and I was like, oh my God, 900 8As. I might manage 1,000. And here we are.
Yeah, and that's when you thought, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And so, so it's taken you 28 years to do. That's a long time, and you have got 2 kids, as we were just chatting about earlier. How do you find the time to fit in all the climbing with like kids and family and your various jobs that you do for work?
I think everybody has a bit of a juggling act. They're constantly shuffling things around. Especially as you get older, you get more and more stuff to do, kids, jobs, houses, mortgage. And I find it as equally difficult as it is for probably everybody else. And I think the key for me has been to just make it count. So when I'm training or climbing, I just use my time as wisely as I can do. And I think that's an important thing for everybody, to not just faff around and mess about. And it's a juggling act. It's, like I say, it's taken a long time, 28 years. I could have done it faster, I'm pretty sure, but I'm quite happy with how long it's taken. I mean, if I'd done 1,000 a long time ago, it would just become 2,000 and 3,000. You know, once you've done 1,000, then yeah, maybe that's enough.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And so, like, it's interesting that you said you just don't faff around. Are you only climbing and training, or do you have like do you do like weightlifting or strength work and other things as well as climbing to train?
So I'm maybe not the best example of a rock climber who trains very hard. I just love climbing, and I do tend to take things on a daily basis. Occasionally in the past I've put a little bit of time and effort into actually training. Not really any weights as such, but maybe more sort of off the wall, pull-up style, body weight training to try and get my strength up, because I'm not a very strong climber. I'm actually physically relatively weak. But I've done a bit in the past. These days, yeah, I've not done so much training for quite a while now. I think I probably need to get stuck in actually and do a bit more, because I've let myself drop down a few levels. But there's so much to do in life, and that's one of the reasons why it took me so long to do these 1,000 8a's, because there's tons of stuff to do.
Yeah.
Not just in life generally, but just in climbing. Climbing it's a huge spectrum of types of sport. And they're all brilliant.
Yeah, it's nice to savour it as well. I admire that.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most important strengths to have for doing these 8A climbs?
I would say, I mean, climbing is a combination of lots of different strengths. You've got your physical strengths, your mental approach, your technical and tactical. You know, they're all very important. If I was to choose one, let's go physical, because people can relate to that more easily. The physical strength you really need to climb 8A is you just need to have finger strength. If you haven't got finger strength, you might get away with finding an 8A with just big arms, but at the end of the day, your fingers are the link with the rock, and if you haven't got finger strength, you're going to struggle. So you're going to need that.
And can you train for that like with one of those squishy ball things, or like those fingerboard things that you see in the climbing wall?
Squishy balls? I'd say fingerboarding is better. For most people, you're best off getting your finger strength by climbing.
Oh, right.
I'd say if you have no access to climbing, then a fingerboard could be useful, but the majority of climbers will do very well with just climbing. Mm-hmm. And I had not even touched a fingerboard until I'd climbed well above 8A, well above 8. So yeah, for most people, don't get too sucked into the fingerboard training, just climb, just climb, and that will do.
Yeah, climb. Oh, that's good to know. And so, about the climbs then, like, have you got any that stick out as sort of favourite climbs? Like, are these 8As that you've done in the UK, or have you been all over the world doing them? Have you got a few highlights that you can share?
Well, I mean, the interesting thing, I was thinking about this the other day, because somebody said, you know, what's the best 8As that you've done? And ironically, the best routes that stand out that are of 8A difficulty are actually the traditional routes. So normally we don't grade traditional routes with a sport grade. They get a traditional grade.
It's like V diff and then diff,
yes,
and then hard severe and all that sort of.
That's right. So typically like an E7 or an E8 or an E9 might be of 8A difficulty, but we don't tend to give it an 8A grade. But they are of that difficulty. Now, those traditional routes, they really stand out. They really stick out, and yeah, if I look back, they're some of the biggest memories that I have. But I'm going to stick with just sport routes because it's a little bit easier.
So with sport, just sorry to interrupt, but like I'm not like a super good climber or anything. So what's the difference between like traditional climbing and sport climbing? There's lots of bolts on the way up.
Good question.
Is that what sport climbing is?
So sport climbing is basically rock climbing with the I won't say the danger removed, because it's, you know, there's always an element of danger, but we're not placing our own protection. So sport climbing has pre-placed bolts, and they don't tend to come out at all. You know, they're very, very safe, and it makes the danger element much reduced. So we're focusing on the difficulty.
And you don't have to carry a rack full of bits and bobs to jam into cracks.
You got it. Whereas obviously traditional climbing, there's no bolts, and you are responsible completely for protecting yourself in the way that nature has dictated. So the two things are very different. So sticking with sport climbing, the routes, there's a lot of, you know, there's 1,000 of them, so which routes stick out? So obviously we're talking 8A and above. There's a couple of routes in particular. There's a route called Rain Shadow, which really is a great route. It's 9A. It has got an 8A to start it, called Rain Dogs. That really was a special route for me because it was one of the hardest grade 8 routes that I've done in the UK. It took me ages to do it. And then to carry on into a 9A, it's a much later down the line, you know, a long way down the line. That was quite a journey. So first of all, Rain Dogs, the 8A, brilliant route, pushed me, took me quite a few days to do it. I would never have dreamed I would extend that route further down the line. So then to climb something harder and higher was a great journey. So those two things are brilliant, and a beautiful place as well.
Where is that?
It's at a cliff called Malham Cove in Yorkshire, which is absolutely stunning. It's a place where you could go as a walker, or even as a totally non-outdoor person, and you would have a lovely time just being there. It's beautiful.
Yeah, there's a nice good path in, isn't there? Like even like probably pushchair and possibly wheelchair accessible.
It is.
As well.
It's pushchair,
really
wheelchair accessible.
Yeah.
So anybody can go. It's beautiful. It's one of the most amazing places in the UK, and to be able to go there and climb is a total privilege.
Awesome. And so have you got like also a favourite climb that you've done overseas that was a bit more of an adventure to get to?
Well, yes. I've been to quite a few places abroad. A few routes that really stand out would be in places like Thailand, because Thailand is I spent a lot of time in Thailand. It's absolutely gorgeous over there. Greece has got amazing climbing. It climbs a lot on what we call tufas and stalactites, which are, you know, big features formed by water. You really feel like you're climbing something that nature has created. I think Greece is probably my favourite place to climb.
Which part?
So Kalymnos, it's very famous. It's really well known by climbers. It's a playground for climbers. It's got the sea, it's got the sunshine, it's got the food, it's got the culture. Yeah, head there. And
so which was your favourite route there, do you think?
Well, that's a question. There's a route called Fundachichune. I think that's how you pronounce it, maybe not. That's an 8A which crosses some very unlikely terrain. It's like 50-degree overhanging. It's like 45 metres long. You look at it and think, that looks impossible, but it's so much fun. It's just amazing.
That sounds amazing.
It is.
Onto the one in Thailand, can you think of the names of any of those favourite climbs over there?
There was a route which really stuck out. I'm just trying to remember the name of it now. And it was something like, I think it's Asia Shadow Play. It's an 8A plus. It's one of the very earliest 8A pluses that I did first go. And it is, I'd spent a lot of time there. I spent 3 months camping on the beach there. Wow. And it was such an experience, like a life experience.
Oh, what was the rock like that you were climbing on for that one?
It's amazing. There's a lot of stalactites. You've got to get the conditions right there. It's hard, it's hot, it's sweaty. So you're getting up early, getting up at like 6 o'clock to get the best conditions. But the lifestyle there is so great. I'd love to go back.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Wow, sounds like a nice holiday to get all these 8As done. So that's kind of covered the most remote 8A.
Oh, well, no, there's more remote.
There's more remote than that. Yeah, what's the most remote one that you did?
The most out there 8A was a traditional route, so we were placing our own protection, but it was definitely of 8A difficulty.
Yeah.
And that was about 800 metres up a new route we climbed in Greenland. That was absolutely middle of nowhere. It was totally out there. 21 pitches up. We'd spent 7 days getting there.
Wow, sleeping on the
Portaledge,
side.
Stow Whale.
Wow.
So that was pretty out there. Yeah, that was definitely remote, to say the least.
Yeah, oh, that's incredible. And was there any that were like really sketchy, where you were like, oh, hang on a minute, I might not be coming back from this?
I mean, that route in particular did have some pretty sketchy moments. There was a couple of moments where I had to sort of pinch myself and say, you know, is this really worth it in terms of level of risk? The 8A pitch itself was actually quite safe. It was a crack, so the protection was good. It wasn't dangerous.
What was it called?
We called it 21.
Oh, you set that route, did you?
We did climb it first, yes.
Wow.
We were the first people up there. No one had ever been there before on that route. First descent. I think it's had a second ascent now.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll have very many ascents.
What did you call it?
So we called it 21.
Oh, sorry.
That was the name.
Which was 21 pitches.
So the reason why we called it 21 is a sort of slightly personal story. Basically, it was 21 pitches to that point. There was more pitches afterwards. But I can remember getting to the top of pitch 21 and thinking, it's getting late a bit now. Time's getting on. I wonder what time it is. And I looked at my watch, and it was exactly 21, 21, and 21 seconds.
Whoa.
Which
and
was just
on pitch 21.
on pitch 21, which I just thought that was quite. But my overriding thought there was like, oh dear, like it's going to get dark soon, and we've got quite a long way to go. And it ended up being another 4 pitches, and we finished in pitch black.
With head torches.
With head torches, yeah. And it was just a little bit scary the last bit. And I remember my friend Miles Gibson, who I climbed it with, saying, "Okay, awesome. What shall we call it?" And I said, "Let's call it 21." And he was like, "All right, let's call it that." So I mean,
awesome,
it's maybe not the best of names, but it was just. I just thought it was unusual because we got to the top of pitch 21 and said, "Wow, that was an awesome pitch. What time is it?" And it was all the 21s all laid up.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting story to it. Yeah,
maybe.
I like it. That's cool. And so, were there any that got away? Like, was there an 8A that you couldn't do, or any that you wished you could have done?
So I'm lucky that not many have got away. There's been routes that I've tried that I've not done, but I don't feel as though they got away because I didn't really invest in them. I might have tried them and gone, whoa, that's really hard. There's a lot of 8As I've fallen off. I've then gone back to climb them with practice, or second go, third go, whatever. The ones that I feel as though got away with the hard on-sites. So if you're not sure what on-site means, it means first go. So you don't know any information. You try it, you know, for the first time.
Are you allowed to read the guidebook?
Yes.
Okay. You're just not
yes.
allowed to sort of recce it.
No. So if someone tells you how to do it or gives you information, then you're then on what we call a flash, which is still first go, which is still great, a great style to climb in. And if you fall off and then you have another go later, we call that a red point. And a red point could take, you know, you might try it one time on your red point. So you had your flash go, on-site go, failed, and then you do it second go. That's a red point. It could also take you 10 days or 100 days. It's still a red point. Anyway, the flash go or on-site go, once you've fallen off, that's gone. You know, you've blown it. So there's been a lot of those that have got away, and a few stick out because I never got a grade of 8C. I got lots of 8B pluses. Didn't get an 8C, but I got really close.
But you got 9A.
But that was on red point.
Oh,
that's after practice.
Okay.
So
you didn't on-site an 8C?
No.
Just 8B?
I got 8B or 8B plus.
Oh, brilliant.
I never got the 8C. I got really close to 3, I think, like a hair's breadth away. I don't feel like it's going to tear me down. It doesn't eat me up at all, but it would have been nice to get it. So yeah, that one got away.
Yeah. Do you think you'll go back and try for that, or is it something that's a bit of a like, oh well, never mind?
So I don't think it's not something I will really sort of bother me, my old age. Occasionally I do try still an 8C on site every now and again, but I'm a bit older now, and I'm not quite sure I'm as strong as I was before. But the key to on-siting, you need to be in the zone. You need to be doing it a lot, that style, and I don't do as much of that as I used to, so I'm just not as honed, not as up to speed with it. So it's probably slipped me by, that one.
Yeah, but yeah, it
Never
sounds
mind.
like you've done well enough.
I'm all right. I'm all right with that.
Yeah, and cool. And there's quite a good story, isn't there, around your last 8A climb? A little bit of a full circle.
Oh,
Can you
yeah.
just tell us a little bit about that in a nutshell?
So yeah, in a nutshell, keeping it brief. So that my very first, what I consider my first sport route, was a route called Let the Tribe Increase. Is a crag called Rubicon in the Peak. It was 7C plus. And when I climbed it, I was so new to sport climbing, I didn't really know what I was doing. And I climbed that route. It took me an hour, so I didn't get it first go. I got it on red point, second go. And at the time, it was so exciting because it was hard. It was harder than I'd climbed before. And it was this new sport climbing style. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, it's not scary, it's not dangerous, and you can climb really hard things. And this route was really hard, and I was so excited by it. And then I then went on to get into sport climbing. Climbed my first 8A a couple of years later, really excited by it, and then went on to climb 999 more 8As. And then I'd heard that the same route had been upgraded. Some holes had broken and snapped off, and it's 8A now. And I thought, wow, to climb that as my 1000th 8A, because it was the start, it was the route number one that got me into it. If I can make that my 1000th 8A, that'd be so cool. So I said to some people that I was going to go and try it, and they were like, yeah, that's a really good choice, you know, that'll be awesome. And one of my friends from the USA was coming over, and I said, oh, we're thinking about going out to Rubicon to try this route. And he was like, yeah, that would be so cool, because I belayed you on it when you'd climbed it for the first time. And I was like, wow, that is so cool. So, you know, this guy came back from the States. I see him like once every 5 years. So we went back and climbed it again together, and it was just such a great journey to make that number 1000. It was a perfect day, perfect.
Amazing. That's a great story, and it just seems to go full circle, doesn't it?
Really, yeah.
A nice ending to the project. Yeah.
Yeah, a really nice ending, and to be back in a really familiar place on a route which we'd done before. Bunch of really great friends in the same place. The weather was good. We captured it for film, BMC TV. It was great.
Awesome. And so, are there any 8As left in the UK that you haven't climbed?
Oh, hundreds.
Oh, okay. So there's
hundreds,
yeah.
Loads and loads of 8As.
How many 8As do you think there are, like, in the UK? Is it like 5,000, 10,000, 20,000?
No, it's no. So I think the number of 8As and above, I think on ukclimbing.com has got them listed. I'm going to guess somewhere between 700 and 800, somewhere around there. A lot of them are variations. So it might be like same start and two different finishes, or it might be a different start into a link into it. So there's probably less than that are like independent lines, but there's potentially 700 or 800 8A routes to be done. I've done about 280, so I've got loads more to do. Yeah, just scratch the surface.
Only done a few.
Only a few.
Well, there's lots left for the project. And do you have any like favourite gear that you consider really essential to your climbing?
Well, for sport climbing, then the piece of gear which I think is probably the most important really is what's called it's a Petzl Grigri, and it's a belay device, so useful. It just gives you a real sense of security. It's really easy to use, and the key to this device is it's assisted locking. So if somebody falls off, it locks up, and that means that the belayer, they don't have to hold the rope so hard if the climber then wants to rest on the rope. So they can sit on the rope, stay up in the air, and the belayer doesn't have to constantly hold the rope. As long as they keep their hand on the brake side, then it's quite easy to take their weight.
Yeah, so a bit like power-assisted steering in a car.
That's a really good example. Yeah. Okay. So it just means that it helps with safety, and it just means that the environment for the climbers is just a bit easier. And I think most climbers that sport climbing have got an assisted brake device, and the Grigri is probably the best of the bunch.
Awesome, that is really good to know. And we've talked a little bit about your training, but do you follow any sort of special diet or anything? Do you watch what you eat at all?
I certainly look at what I eat and eat it. That's pretty much it. I don't really follow any diet. I eat reasonably healthily. We eat quite a lot of salad. We eat quite a lot of veg, but we eat lots of pizza. We eat lots of pies. I do a lot of exercise, like a lot. So my weight is fairly low, I think. I've never had to watch my diet. I think if I saw a dietitian, they'd probably tell me to sort myself out and
Seems
eat.
to be working so far.
Well, yes.
I just wondered if you were like a vegan or a vegetarian or anything like that. Like there's a lot of sort of shift in the outdoor world and the running world where I come from. Like a lot of people are going vegan. I just wondered if that's something that you've experimented with or
No. So I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian. I think probably the only thing that I am aware of is that if I eat a lot of carbs, it does shut me down for some period of time, like certainly an hour or two. So if I want to climb or cycle or do something fairly active, if I have a big lunch, I'll pay for it.
You're a bit sleepy.
Yeah. I think that's probably always been the case.
Yeah.
I just maybe notice it a bit more now that I'm older. So a pizza before going climbing is a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
Or like a big French baguette with a lot of cheese and salami in there.
Yeah, you just want to have a sleep after that.
Yeah, so I want to eat it, but I've learned that I shouldn't eat it.
Yes, yeah, no, that's good advice. And so just back to the achievement really, what do you like best about this achievement of 1,000 8a's and more climbs?
I think it's a nice number.
Very satisfying.
I think one of the things which, it's a personal thing, and to be fair, it is no real big deal because a lot of people around the world have climbed more than 1,000 8a's in a shorter period of time. So it's not something that's unique to me, no way. And a lot of climbers have done that. But what I personally have found really great about it is it gave me an excuse to look back on them all, because I hadn't really done that before. You just do your stuff, and when I got close to doing it, I was like, wow, okay, let's just look back. And looking back on them all and all the climbing I've done was a really lovely experience. Talking about people saying which is your best one and which took you the longest, and it's been a chance to sort of look back on it all and seen all the stuff that I've done, and that's great. And what did stand out, bizarrely, was it wasn't the 1,000 8a's, it was all the other stuff as well, which really stood out. The fact that climbing is such a broad church with so many different areas. It's got traditional climbing, it's got bouldering, it's got competition climbing, deep water soloing. It's all in there, and I think the thing which I think personally is really stands out and that I'm personally most proud of is that I've done all of these different types of climbing and enjoyed them all, and hopefully will continue to enjoy them for many years to come. Yeah, that's awesome. And you sort of touched a little bit on this, but what have you learned about yourself during this challenge? Have you learned anything? Yeah. So I think what I have learned about myself is that I love being in the outdoors. That's probably the thing that stands out most of all. It doesn't have to be climbing even. I just love being in the outside. And secondly, I love all types of climbing. And when I've looked back on the 1,000 8a's, it's kind of clear that I do like to do all different types of climbing. And I kind of always known that, but it sort of brought it into focus. Yeah. And even when I was getting towards like number 1,000, I still wanted to go traditional climbing, mountain biking, walking, deep water soloing. I wasn't focused on let's just tick this 1,000. It wasn't so important. It was the fact that I was just getting out there and doing all the stuff, really. Yeah,
a nice variety. Yeah, and have you learnt anything about the sport of climbing during this challenge?
That's a tricky question. The sport of climbing.
Has it changed? Because obviously it's taken almost 30 years to do. Has anything changed? People are talking about climbing becoming more diverse, and then there's also access things, and BMC are buying crags and things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has anything sort of changed as you've gone along? Anything you've noticed?
Well, yes. Things have changed hugely. So from the start of my climbing up till now, there's been a monumental change in the number of people participating in climbing is hugely gone up. We've got competition climbing, we've got indoor climbing, we've got sport climbing. They weren't around when I first started. So yes, things have changed massively. There's a lot more people in the sport now, so there's a bigger burden on the outdoor spaces. So the fact that BMC are still massively involved with keeping the access is so important, and people underestimate how much the BMC do. It is so critical, and it's so good to be part of the BMC, to be ambassador for the BMC, and to be able to try and spread the word about the access and environmental stuff they do is great, because it's so crucial. Now that climbing is becoming more mainstream, it's going to become more and more pressure. One of the beautiful things about the outdoors, though, is there's a lot of it. There's a lot of outdoor spaces, and you can still find yourself utterly alone in somewhere absolutely out there, and that I think is great.
Yeah, that is definitely awesome. And so you have already written a book, is that right?
I have.
About your life and your climbing. Will you be writing a book about this experience?
I certainly won't be writing a book about this particular 1,000 8a's, because I think it'd be more of a pamphlet. And it'd be,
Just publish your logbooks.
I don't think it'd be that interesting. I was going to say I don't think it'd be that interesting for people to read, but that's not really why I would write a book anyway. So the last book I wrote was, my autobiography, but I wrote it because I wanted to write it. And any writing that I do is because I like to do the writing. And it's nice that people would like to read it, but I think it's got to come from the writer themselves. So I won't write about these 1,000, but I might write about my climbing journey in total. Obviously my last one kind of ended like 10 years ago, so there's 10 more years of climbing. So maybe I will continue the journey at some point.
A sequel to the book.
Maybe
in
possibly.
Another 10 years.
The current book it's out of print. It's hard to buy now. So if you want to buy it, it's not easy to get hold of. Maybe there's scope for the next chapter.
Yeah, second edition.
Maybe.
Brilliant. Oh, that sounds awesome. Well, watch this space. We'll certainly let people know if that is the case.
Right.
And what is next for you then in 2024 and beyond? Have you got any exciting projects that you can share with us?
Well, there's always something going on. The last few years, the thing which has been really cool is the way that things appeared. Really cool things which I wouldn't have seen coming. And I actually quite like that at the moment. So in the past, I've always had some project, long-term project, some plan. At the moment, I don't tend to let that happen. I like the flexibility, but I have got a few things that I'd like to do next year. I really want to go to, it's not really climbing related, but I want to go to the Greater Ranges, the Himalaya, and just do some trekking peaks. So that's not really rock climbing based. I've got my eye on some hard sport routes. I've not climbed anything in the 9A range for a while. It'd be great to get involved with something of that difficulty again. I had my plans to do something of that hard this year, but the weather stopped play completely. So yeah, let's see how that pans out for next year. But something hard again.
Yeah.
Something hard.
And how can people follow you if they want to keep up abreast with everything that you're doing?
Well, I suppose social media, Instagram. I'm on there. I'm not a new kid on the block with social media, but I post some stuff every now and again.
Yeah. Can you remember your Instagram handle? Is it quite straightforward?
Not really.
Just Google Steve McClure.
Yeah, that will do it.
Yeah, awesome. Oh well, thank you so much for chatting to us today, Steve. It's been really amazing to find out more about your 1,000 8A's and higher climbing. And yeah, thank you for being a great ambassador for the BMC.
It's a pleasure.